In this training, we will discuss the concept of human trafficking. We will use two ASL signs to describe human trafficking, either the letters HT or human control. This training is titled Human Trafficking 101, Deaf Community Members and Service Providers. Note that what you will see in this video may be triggering. Know that we will discuss the topics of domestic violence, sexual violence, and child abuse, which may trigger negative emotions. To begin, let's discuss appropriate vocabulary choices when doing this work. Instead of using the term child or teen prostitute, use human trafficking survivor. Instead of using the word victim, use the word survivor. Instead of using phrases like, "That's awful," or "I can't believe it," or "I don't believe it," say, "I believe you and it's not your fault." Instead of saying, "You are safe now," say, "We will do everything we can to help keep you safe." Instead of saying, "You can trust me," say, "Trust my actions, not only my words." Human trafficking is the fraud, deception, or abuse of power to control another person. Labor trafficking is a form of human trafficking, labor, or services. Sex trafficking is human trafficking for the purpose of sexual exploitation, either through fraud or coercion or in someone under the age of 18. Human trafficking has various forms, but this training will focus on sex trafficking. It's important that we understand the role of force, which can take the form of physical violence, restraint, sexual exploitation, abuse, isolation, monitoring, and other means. Fraud occurs when a victim believes that they are getting paid for a certain labor, but it may not be the job they were promised, or money is withheld. Victims may struggle to identify these situations and knowing when it is that their abuser is manipulating them, and may not feel safe to report their circumstances. Coercive control is when an abuser uses threat of violence against a victim, their family or loved ones, or even their pets to psychologically manipulate them and instill fear. Coercion can also be when abusers withhold basic needs or official documents, threaten to post degrading photos or other information online, or threaten to report a victim to the police. When minors or those under the age of 18 sell sex to support their basic needs, that is considered human trafficking. These situations are referred to as CSEC, or the commercial sexual exploitation of children. CSEC does not necessarily involve a pimp or a madam, but exploitation is done by the adult who exchanges sex with a minor for money. Knowing how to identify a trafficker is extremely important. Often traffickers are a member of someone's family, such as a parent, an aunt or uncle, or a grandparent. Traffickers may also be family friends or someone from a shared community. The second most common category of traffickers are romantic partners engaging in relationship-based trafficking. Victims may be manipulated by their partners because they trust them. Trafficking can also occur in brothels or businesses, such as escort services, which are often run by female exploiters. Gangs can engage in human trafficking as well, and often will have multiple pimps which exploit female victims. Traffickers often engage in specific behaviors, such as isolating their victims or forbidding them from making contact with their friends or family. Traffickers will promise to provide caring relationships or money in exchange for this person's loyalty. However, they may monitor their victims' use of telephone, social media, or their interactions with other people, and these relationships are often abusive and controlling, both physically and emotionally. Human trafficking can affect anyone. Abusers often search for victims experiencing some systemic vulnerabilities, such as love, housing, or other support, and fill in that support in exchange for commercial sex. I experienced sexual violence at the age of 13. Because many of my friends were in similar situations, it normalized sexual violence for all of us. This continued throughout my teenage years, having experienced sexual violence several times by adult men. When I was 17, my best friend was working for a woman business owner who said, "You two can dance for money." I thought that I could be empowered by the work, that no one could touch me without consent, but it turned out to be sex trafficking. That experience turned out to be incredibly degrading. I experienced so much sexual violence and drug use, and ultimately got pregnant at the age of 21. My story isn't unique and can happen to anyone. My parents were not neglectful, but they were distracted, and my school didn't notice a change in my behavior. My church expelled me, and my friends' parents were often part of the problem. Your community can be a supportive environment and prevent trafficking through strong social connections, through standing in spaces where traffickers thrive and creating strong communities where we look out for each other. We can prevent trafficking. Identifying potential victims in your community starts by knowing the common signs or red flags of human trafficking. It can be difficult to determine what type of abuse is happening. However, if you notice any red flags in your community, it's best to call this hotline with representatives who can help you determine if the abuse is trafficking or another type of abuse, such as child abuse or domestic violence, and if so, what to do about it. Here are some common red flags you should be aware of. If someone struggles to afford expenses, but then gets unexplained expensive gifts, or if someone else is controlling their bank account. If someone has a pimp or manager who follows them, even if they are called a boyfriend in social circles. If you see someone getting in and out of cars often at the same location, or if they go often to a motel or a hotel, if they post sexual content on social media, if they skip school or other day programs, if they miss medical appointments, or if they're afraid to go home. If you see signs of physical abuse, such as bruises, cuts, or burns, if they wear clothing inappropriate to the season, or if they wear the same clothes all the time. If someone has broken or stolen someone's assistive technology, such as a cane, walker, wheelchair, hearing aid, or anything that person needs for access. The same can happen with phones, medicine, and disability benefits. Abusers may also try to accompany someone to appointments or prevent having an interpreter present. Let's focus now on vulnerabilities specific to deaf populations, such as language access or social support. It may be difficult for victims to report their abuse when there is no interpreter or other barriers to communication in reporting to the police, to child welfare, or other support services. Child welfare agencies may not provide interpreters, creating additional barriers to reporting. Living far from one's home environment may lead to a lack of oversight and teachers, school staff, or others may be abusers. Unfortunately, there is no current law requiring schools for the deaf to report sexual abuse to federal authorities, meaning there is no data on how often this occurs in schools for the deaf. Community resources such as direct mental health services or specialist and survivor services for deaf populations are often very limited. This is also true for employment services tailored to deaf people who are unemployed, underemployed compared to the general population. In addition, race or gender-based discrimination may impact economic security for deaf individuals. Or underemployment can create vulnerability or trafficking. Before this training was developed, there were no resources in American Sign Language about human trafficking. This leads to a general lack of awareness of trafficking. It's important that we continue to educate and support the deaf community in preventing abuse, including healthy relationship education in schools. If you are a member of the deaf community, there are factors that naturally reduce your risk of abuse. First, community members are often very connected and watch out for each other. To increase protective factors, all community members, including children, elders, and service providers, such as teachers, counselors, should be included in awareness-building activities such as this training to know the signs of abuse. Healthy relationships are key to keeping everyone safe. Exercise care and responsibility in your relationships, ensuring that you have honest and open relationships with your friends, family, romantic partners, and other community members. Keep communication at the center of maintaining healthy relationships with your support networks such as family, school staff, foster parents, caseworkers, teachers, and other community members. The deaf community values communication. Stability is key to preventing abusive situations, including housing, finances, and relationships. Health coping skills are also important because stress, trauma, or other mental health issues are all risks for victimization. Access to resources is crucial. As a community, the deaf population is diverse and diversity is valued. The multiple experiences in the community is its strength. You can use trauma-informed care to center the physical and emotional safety of a person who has experienced abuse, empowering them to make decisions about their own care. Providing a trusting, honest, and transparent care environment will require honesty and confidentiality. Be sure to use appropriate vocabulary when caring for a victim, both in English and in ASL, using the guide we've provided in this training. Establish direct communication when providing care, often by using an interpreter. Be sure to conduct interviews without the abuser being present. Use interpreting or other communication support as needed. Practice patience as you provide accommodations to the victim, and set aside more time than normal to move through the process. If you see suspected human trafficking or abuse, you should contact the National Human Trafficking Hotline or these other resources that provide mental health, safe housing, and other support services. Here are some ways to get started. Advocate for language access in trainings, schools, agencies, and curricula. Gain a better understanding of human trafficking and any personal biases that may affect your work. Volunteer with adults or youth in the community who are at risk for human trafficking.